COVID long haulers, it's part of it is in the definition. Once a disease has attacked a body, there are persons who will continue to experience the effects of the disease after the initial or active um, transmission of the disease to that person. So my name is Johnathan Shepherd. I am a board certified child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist. Long haulers are those people who have been initially affected by the virus, may have been hospitalized, may or may not have been hospitalized, but months down the road, they are still experiencing symptoms as a result of being infected by the virus. These symptoms can be both physical and mental symptoms. Some of the symptoms that you may have experienced physically, they may be pneumonia, continued pneumonia, which is just infection of the lung. You could have scarring in your lungs due to the pneumonia, actually even due to being on a ventilator if you had to receive those services while you were hospitalized. There are reports of myocarditis, which is an infection of the muscle around the heart, and even can be even an infection within the heart muscle itself and the fluid surrounding the heart. You can have clotting issues where your blood begins to clot and throw emboli, which are blood clots. Emboli is just a technical term for blood clots throughout your body. You can have joint pain, which can be quite debilitating. And then on the mental side, you can have cognitive loss, short memory loss, brain fog, as they call it, just difficulty remembering, concentrating, being able to focus. So there's just so many different things that can occur after a person has experienced that initial effect of being uh, affected by the virus. It is smart that we recognize that not only the person infected by the virus, but those who are surrounding the person. So the caregivers, the family members, those you have outlined, everyone has been affected. And truthfully, the pandemic has sparked another pandemic, if you would, of sorts of mental health. And I have a reason to believe that this mental health pandemic is going to be even more far-reaching than even this the coronavirus pandemic, if you would. So, what are some of the effects? I've talked about the brain fog, cognitive memory loss, but depression, anxiety, those two things. Depression for those persons who have now experienced the coronavirus, being depressed because they can no longer function the way in which they did. Depression can set in because even as they went through their hospitalization, they were unable to see their family members. Those who were able to typically should have been able to support them, they no longer were able to be around them. So even if they didn't go to the hospital, you had to quarantine away from your family members. So that caused depression. And what I mean by depression, I don't mean just sad feeling. There is a difference between just feeling sad and depression. Depression is where you're not functioning properly. It is sadness. It is inability to eat. Your sleep pattern is off, poor concentration, and even people have thoughts of wanting to hurt or harm themselves. That is what depression is. It is a true disorder. Anxiety, not knowing what's going to happen next and not allowing you to be able to function properly because the feeling overwhelmed, frustrated, to the point to where you yourself cannot function. So that could be the person or even the family members. And then caregivers. And what I mean by caregivers, the nursing staff, the doctors themselves. Let's start there. The doctors themselves. We are not immune to the mental health effects of dealing with this pandemic. So doctors themselves are feeling depressed, overworked, anxious, not knowing whether or not are they the persons who they're caring for, are they going to make it? And then they have to be concerned about their family members when they return home. Are they carrying back the virus to their family members? There's several examples of where physicians, unfortunately, have had to stop working. There are some nationwide reports There are doctors who committed suicide. There was the one that went, the well-noted, I forget what type of physician she was, but she was working in New York on a frontline worker and ended up killing herself because she just couldn't take it anymore. So these things occur. Um, so then the last point I want to make is the grief. So when the coronavirus was at its peak, and I want to let the people know who listen to me, it's still at its peak right now, but even when it was at its peak in New York, when the morgues and the funeral homes were overwhelmed and the hospitals were overwhelmed, there were people who were literally dying and their family members were not there when they died. That was sad because the last person that last time that person may have seen someone was before they dropped them off at the hospital, or the nurse was the last person that person saw before they died, who was not related to them. That is devastating, and so people have to live with that. I know stories of a person who was dying from the coronavirus, and they had a husband, a spouse, and two children, but they only allowed two people up in the room. So they had to vote as to which of the three could go see that person before that woman died. Can you imagine that? Having to figure out who would be the two out of three and that last person left behind and what they must be going through. So that guilt, all of these things surround what we have encountered during this coronavirus pandemic. Ventilators, they are a good thing, but you must know that there are effects, long-term effects that could occur with the use of a ventilator. And that's really with anything that we use in medicine. There's always a risk of some long-term effects. Even though it might be a life-saving technique, there may be long-term effects that go along with that. So with ventilators, you could have potential scarring of the lungs. When you have scarring in the lungs, that could affect your ability to breathe, your ability to exert energy. So you may have what's called dyspnea and other things that could occur. So just keeping in practical terms, you may have been able to climb up 12 steps, 12 sets of stairs very easily. And now you can only do 5 as opposed to 12 because of that scarring. And there's such thing called fibrosis that could result as a part of the scarring. And when you have fibrosis set in, it really is tough. That means that your lungs are not as flexible as they used to be. That's why when we inhale and exhale, your lungs are spongy tissue. But when that ventilator gets in there, it could cause scarring. And so now that spongy tissue cannot move as easily, and now it gets stuck. And anybody knows what a sponge feels like. You know what a dirty sponge, when you can't, that's exactly how your lungs could turn out. Pre-existing conditions could potentially be a part of why they are experiencing long-term effects. Yes, but let me tell you, there are clear examples. And I was just reading one in MedPage Today, which is a reputable resource. And so there was a gentleman who weighed 142 pounds. He was a vegan, did not have any other medical conditions, and contracted the coronavirus. And due to the coronavirus, he began having breathing problems and continues to have breathing problems. Actually ended up losing almost 30 some pounds, got down to 115 pounds. And now this person, he has recovered. He's recovered his weight back to about 128 pounds, but he's still having problems with dyspnea, which is disrupted or dyspnea. DYS means that there is a dysfunction in his ability to breathe. He's not able to carry out some of the same functions that he normally was. So that is clear examples. And there are other clear examples of people who have had no other prior medical conditions. You also can look. Some people say that coronavirus doesn't affect young adults. That's just not true. Young adults are greatly affected. Some people, they recover quickly. Some of them do not. Some of them die. I know young people who have died, young adults who have died from the coronavirus. And so that's just simply not true. It may not be as large of a percentage as others, but just because something's not a large percentage, that should not mean that we dismiss it altogether. We're still finding out. There is no magic answer to this. We have never dealt with this virus before. This is a novel virus, which is why we are experiencing what we're experiencing today. So there is no correct answer. People say that you need to take more vitamin C, more vitamin D. Those are good things, but there's no proof to these things. Again, there are people who are in good condition, who are medically stable. And when you get this virus, because it's a novel virus, everything is up for grabs. So, I hear and I read where people say you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do this, you need to do that. But truthfully, that's just their opinion. There has not been sustainable data to state that these are the things that you need to do to avoid the coronavirus. And if you read those things, then you need to beware because, and I want to tell you, you need to be beware of those because many of the scientists will let you know those may be good for just good lifestyle habits, but to avoid the coronavirus, no, you need to do the 3 W's to avoid the coronavirus. The 3 W's, which is wear your mask, wash your hands, and to watch your distance. Those are the things that have proven as in regards to prevention of the coronavirus. And even with all that, you still can, contract this virus. It is a sneaky virus, nothing that we've ever seen before. And you just need to take precautions. This is not the time to ease up. We got to remain vigilant. And again, practice good, lifestyle habits. We should be eating better. For those people who are been quarantined, this is not the time to just to feed up on or just eat up everything in your refrigerator and cupboard. I understand you're quarantined, and people even laugh about the quarantine 15. There's nothing really to laugh about. That means you need to get on outside and we got to exercise. So do that, exercise, walk. This is not the time to get stuck. This is a time to reinvent yourself, if you would. Look to see what things you can do to keep yourself active. And I even want to speak to those people who've lost their jobs economically. You are suffering. And so those persons, I understand you're hurting. Jobs have been furloughed, pay cuts. And so those issues are very real. So you got to make sure that if you're not functioning properly, that you're seeking out the help that you need. They can follow me on my social media pages. I do have a YouTube channel, Johnathan Shepherd. You can follow me on my professional pages, Dr. Johnathan Shepherd. Shepherd is spelled like a real shepherd, Shepherd, one who leads. And so I like saying that. So make sure that you check me out. I have 2 weekly broadcasts that I do. One that is focused on mental health aspects in relation to the physical body. And so I do that on Friday evenings at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then I do one on Saturday afternoons at 12 noon. I look at the mental health aspects and how it affects us spiritually in your spiritual health. So check me out on one of those 2. And you can check me on my YouTube page or my YouTube channel, or my Facebook page, and go back and listen to those shows.